live debate coverage is brought to you by the Regina and District Chamber of Commerce, the Saskatchewan Realtors Association, the Regina and Region Home Builders Association, Regina Downtown, and the Regina Warehouse District.
Good evening and welcome to Decision 2020. Your province, your vote. I'm proud to welcome you to tonight's debate, and we'll get right to it. From the Saskatchewan Party, we have Donna Harpower. Welcome. From the Green Party, we have Naomi Hunter. Welcome. Good to see you again. From the NDP, we have Trent Wotherspoon. From the Buffalo Party, we have Phil Zajac. And from the Liberal Party, my friend who's been here at every single debate, Bruno.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruno. Good to see you. So we'll head right to the rules for the debate, and this is how we arrived at where we are tonight. So first thing I want to say is that each candidate will be given the opportunity for opening comments of 2 minutes and closing comments of 2 minutes. Each candidate will be given equal opportunity to answer each question. Each candidate will also be given an opportunity to ask another candidate of their choosing a question. Now, they have to do this within 20 seconds, but I've been told maybe 20 seconds is not long enough, so maybe we'll go to 30 seconds tonight. The candidate who's asked will get 45 seconds, maybe even a minute, to answer the question. For transparency purposes, we did draws for just about everything. For the podium placement, we did draws for who's got opening comments, and the closing comments will be the reversed. Who's going to answer the first question, and the order of the candidate-to-candidate questions. So let's move right into it and look at our opening comments. That will be done by, first of all, Mr. Zajac.
Hi, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight and watching this debate. This vote could be one of the most important votes that we've seen in recent history in Saskatchewan. Things are happening federally and provincially that are simply taking the wealth that we've created here in Saskatchewan and dispersing it to other parts of the world and other parts of the country. We need a party that will stand up to the federal government and put our feet in the ground and say, you know what, you want to make bad choices, go ahead and make those bad choices for yourself. Don't force us to follow in your footsteps. We need to take care of Saskatchewan people first, and that's what the Buffalo Party is going to do. There's a lot of talk, and this happens all the time in elections. When fear starts to come, they talk about splitting the vote. There's no possible way that the Sask Buffalo Party can split the vote. We ran 17 candidates for a reason. We didn't run a full slate of candidates. We ran candidates in selected areas so that threat of splitting the vote is not anything that's relevant in this election. If you do the math, if you wanted to collectively get the people to split the vote, you would have to call 51% of the voting people in Saskatchewan. So you would have to reach over 300,000 people personally. And if you have that kind of time to call that many people and then ensure that they go and vote that particular way, then they need to be on my team because I need them to make those phone calls. It's the voting to get one candidate to not win so that another one does never works. And we found that out in the last federal election. There was a lot of selective voting that took place and the Liberals still formed government. So please, vote for the Saskatchewan Party. We will stand up for every single person in Saskatchewan first. We'll always hire Saskatchewan companies first, and we'll lead this province even as we are. Our hope is to be the direct opposition to the provincial government.
Thank you. I made a mistake. Ms. Hunter, you were supposed to go first. I'll make sure you go last. Go ahead.
So am I going first or last? You got to pick here.
No, for closing comments, I'll make sure you're last.
All good. Hello, my name's Naomi Hunter. I'm the leader of the Saskatchewan Green Party, an MLA candidate for Regina Elphinstone Centre. This election, yes, we are in a time of great urgency. We don't have 4 more years. We don't have 2 more election cycles. We have a crisis that we are dealing with that goes beyond the pandemic that we are currently facing in our school system, in our society of COVID-19. That's the climate crisis. Right now, the climate clock in Manhattan is set at 7 years. Okay? It was set at 15 years for a very long time. We have 7 years to hold this planet to 1.5 degrees. In order to do that, we need to set target limits, 60% reductions within 4 years. 100% clean energy within 10 years. 2035 is too late. 2050 is completely missing the crisis. We need to act now. We need strong legislation to protect the earth for future generations. In order to do this, we need to look after all the people in our society as well. The Saskatchewan Green Party is proposing a guaranteed livable income. This is what many people were calling on the federal government to do when the COVID-19 pandemic first came out. Instead of the CERB, they were saying, do something that actually looks after everybody. Here in Saskatchewan, a provincial guaranteed livable income is particularly key because of the deep cuts to social programming that we have seen over the last 13 years. I am out in one of the poorest ridings in our province, Regina Elphinstone Centre. I'm talking to people who on the said program are receiving less than $500 per month. Okay? We often hear $1,200 is what people are receiving. Not true. I have video footage. Aranucci, one of my candidates, $487. And he's supposed to pay rent, eat, get transportation for that. It was decided by our society that $2,000 a month was the bare minimum that people needed to survive. And yet, we should be embarrassed. Everyone in government should be embarrassed because we are giving people much less than that regularly. We need to deal with these issues in society and come up with good, loving ways to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harper.
Thank you, John, and welcome to the listening audience and my fellow candidates. The Saskatchewan Party platform for the 2020 election is focused on a strong economic recovery to build strong families, communities, and a strong Saskatchewan. We began the election campaign by promising that if re-elected, we would make life more affordable for families through a home renovation tax credit, through a 10% rebate on Sask power bills, through increasing the Saskatchewan Advantage Scholarship, by reducing small business tax, increasing funding for autism services, increasing supports for insulin pumps and monitoring device, and others. Our record of investment into Saskatchewan is clear. We have invested over $33 billion into infrastructure by the Crown corporations and executive government. We've invested nearly $9 billion for over 14,000 kilometers of highways and over $17 billion into Crown corporation infrastructure. We have spent $1.7 billion to build 5 new hospitals, 14 long-term care facilities, and other healthcare infrastructure. There are 900 more doctors and nearly 400 new nurses working in our province. Nearly $1.8 billion has built 57 new schools and 28 major renovations in other schools. We have over 1,300 more teachers and 100 more education assistants working in our province than ever before. Tax reductions have saved Saskatchewan people over $5 billion. We have removed 112,000 people from our provincial tax roll entirely. $1.47 billion has been invested to reduce education property tax, which has saved property taxpayers approximately $100 million per year. The global COVID-19 pandemic represented a big challenge to our province, one that we have never seen before. The people of Saskatchewan worked together, made incredible sacrifices, and showed the true Saskatchewan spirit in our fight against the pandemic. The Saskatchewan Party has a plan to reopen, recover, and rebuild. I believe there is a clear voice for voters. Who do you trust to lead Saskatchewan's economic recovery?
Thank you, Mr. Witherspoon.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, John, and to the Regina Chamber and the home builders and the business improvement districts for organizing this forum. Thank you to my fellow candidates for being here tonight. I think this is my third debate this week. It's been a really important conversation for Saskatchewan people at this historic time. I want to recognize all the people, all the local businesses, all the organizations that have been stepping up in face of this historic challenge as we face COVID-19, as we face this incredible challenge within the economy to protect lives and as well as livelihoods. As we come through this, we need to do all we can to secure an economic recovery that works for people. And that's where there is a stark choice in this election for Saskatchewan people, a province that in many ways is at a crossroads. We know the plan of the Sask party because we've seen it after the last election, and that's a plan of cuts. It's an attack and sell-offs of our crown corporations that are so valued and should be there for future generations, that should be used to make life more affordable. Now is not the time for cuts or for sell-offs. Now is not the time for the imposition of a job-killing tax like we've seen from the Sask party that's decimated our construction industry and put thousands out of work. Now is the time to invest in people. Now is the time to get this economy back on its feet and people back to work with jobs that they can count on. You know, I was on the stage 4 years ago with the Sask party, the finance minister at that point, and he wasn't honest with Saskatchewan people. He said that he was going to balance the books. He said that he wasn't going to raise taxes. He said he wasn't going to cut education. Said that he wouldn't sell off the Crown Corporation. All of those turned out to be lies to Saskatchewan people when we saw shortly thereafter a direct run at our Crown corporations, devastating cuts, and the imposition of the biggest tax hike in Saskatchewan's history that hit households incredibly hard, adding almost $1,000 a year to their bills. Now is the time to make life more affordable, to invest in classrooms and education, and to get this economy back on its feet.
Thank you. Bruno.
Thank you, John. Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, bonsoir, good evening. My name is Bruno Sahu. I'm the bilingual candidate for Regina Lakeview constituency, as well as a representative for the Liberal Party of Saskatchewan. As a preamble for tonight's discussion, I would like to make the following statement. Because we don't see injustice from purposely erased history, the Saskatchewan Liberal Party is committed to move forward in partnership with Indigenous nations, namely Treaty 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, and the Métis Nation, in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration under the Saskatchewan motto, from many people's strengths, to permanently erect, raise, and display the flags of the 7 treaty nations on 7 individual poles of equal height and stature to the Saskatchewan flag on top of the Saskatchewan Legislative Building. Furthermore, and to give meaning to our Treaty 4 acknowledgement for Regina in our constituency of Regina Lakeview, I would like to begin by acknowledging that our constituency of Regina Lakeview is on the traditional lands referred as Treaty 4 territory, the original lands of the Cree, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nations. We respect and honor the treaties that were made in all territories, and we acknowledge the harms and mistakes that were made in the past, and we are committed to move forward in partnership with Indigenous nations and in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Thank you. Merci. Merci. Miigwech.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the questions, and Mr. Zajac, you'll be the first to answer the first question. Should Saskatchewan have a carbon tax?
Well, this is a great question. I'm glad this is what we started off with, because we don't have any chance to prepare. The Buffalo Party absolutely will stop the carbon tax. This is an unfair tax, and like everybody knows, this is a federal tax on a tax. So when you get your power bill and you see your bill, you get a tax, and then you get charged tax again. So regardless of the look of, yes, we're going to go to take this to court, and we're going to try and do these different things, we're just simply going to stop the carbon tax. It is destroying small businesses in Estevan and our area in Saskatchewan. Trucking companies, farmers, everybody's feeling the pinch, and that tax is going to go up. There's only simple ways that, when you look around, that the federal government can tax us further, and one of those ways is to raise the carbon tax, and we all know that that's bad for business and bad for Saskatchewan. We will absolutely not collect it, we will not remit it, and we will not let the federal government tell us what to do with our money.
Thank you. Ms. Harper.
Thank you, John. And the Saskatchewan Party and Scott Moe, as the Premier, has been very, very clear that we do not agree with the carbon tax. We do not believe it's effective. And in fact, we have taken the federal government to court over it because we do not believe it's constitutional. It's very disappointing when we have an official opposition that said that action was a pointless crusade, and we have an official opposition leader that says that, you know, we should have a carbon tax. It's disappointing that that is how they feel, but it's not totally surprising that the NDP believe that we should have a carbon tax. We are unequivocal. We do not believe a carbon tax should be imposed upon the businesses, the farm families, and the individuals within this province.
Thank you. Mr. Witherspoon.
Certainly, I guess I take exception with what that minister is saying here. It's sort of that dishonesty that we've come to know with the Sask Party. The Saskatchewan NDP do not support an economy-wide carbon tax or a federally imposed carbon tax. We're against this. It doesn't make sense for Saskatchewan, for our workers, for our industries, for our rural province. Our leader did support, the Sask Party brought in a carbon price on the biggest emitters, and their support for the Sask Party on that front. But we have an obligation to Saskatchewan people to act on climate change, and we have some real practical solutions that we've laid out to Saskatchewan people. So while we don't need an economy-wide carbon tax, we can act to reduce emissions in really meaningful ways, in very affordable ways and sustainable ways that will create thousands of jobs. And that's why we've proposed Renew Saskatchewan, a plan to fire up renewable power and thousands of jobs all across Saskatchewan, making bills more affordable for Saskatchewan people, farms and businesses, and of course reducing emissions.
Thank you. Bruno.
Oh, thank you. And the question is, do we need a carbon tax? I'd say no. We just have to electrify the province. That's so easy. It's amazing that for so many years, so many decennies, or decades I should say, decennies is French, that they never thought about it. They want to pollute, they want us to eat oil. I don't think so. It's so easy to have solar panels all across Saskatchewan and to produce more electricity that is currently produced by the Saskatchewan power. And we talk about farmers. Farmers could, like anybody else, have electric dryers instead of having gas or oil-produced grain dryers. They have the opportunity now to have electric tractors that could be also put into combines and so on. But that is the question. We don't need oil. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hunter.
Anyone who claims that carbon taxes don't work is very similar to people saying that scientists claiming that the climate crisis isn't real is something that is actually something we can believe in. No, the scientists are correct. There is a climate crisis. And claiming that carbon taxes don't work is like saying that the world's economists are all wrong. The world's economists agree. Carbon taxes work. What I do object to is that the federal Liberal carbon tax was a weak tax. And just putting in a carbon tax on its own and then trying to claim that you're doing something about the climate crisis is like throwing your laundry down the stairs and claiming that you've actually got clean clothes in the morning. Okay, like if my kid tried that, I'd say you got the job half done and half-assed, and you weren't actually doing what I told you to do. We need to be looking at different programs. As politicians, we have the carrot and the stick. The carbon tax, of course, being a stick where, yes, it's meant to be revenue neutral. In the case of farmers, we can put in incentive programs. I remember as a kid, everyone redoing their homes. And yeah, well, I could keep going.
We'll go to the next question. We'll start with you, Ms. Harpower. In the face of uncertain economic times, particularly as it relates to COVID-19, commodity market downturns, et cetera, how would your party deal with a revenue shortfall, tax increases, deficit financing, cuts to programs and or services, or whatever else might be?
So the Saskatchewan Party has a plan for a recovery. About half of the deficit that we are now facing is a one-time expense, and that was due to expenses for COVID, such as the healthcare expenses, and there was expenses throughout all of government. We put additional dollars into education for the reopening of schools. That expense is one time only, so half of the deficit will disappear with that one. The other half of the deficit is largely due to a decline of income through the different revenue streams that we have from our businesses and individuals within our province from the pandemic effect. How would we will recover some of that just from the reopening. We needed to reopen quickly, and we did, even though we had an official opposition that said we were opening too soon. But we've been able to do so in a very safe manner. And then going forward, we have a number of measures to stimulate the economy, and once we are back to where we were, we'll grow the economy.
Thank you very much. Bruno.
Thank you. It is an interesting question because, for one thing, the federal government or the Liberal government is sending a ton of money everywhere in Canada. Some people say they send more money in Quebec. It's just Ontario because they are bigger provinces. But what I object to is the fact that they don't consider the money being brought to Saskatchewan by the federal government as a benefit to Saskatchewan, but as a liability. And therefore, I'm just wondering if the budget or the finances which are being created for Saskatchewan are not taking this money from the Liberal government as a liability into considering the budget, and therefore creating an artificial shortfall of money, even though they should have the money. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hunter.
The Saskatchewan Green Party would revitalize the economy with our clean energy transition plan. Moving our economy over to clean energy, ensuring we have that livable world for our children, will employ the greatest workforce that this province has ever seen since the war effort. There was a point in time during the war effort where it was decided during the War Measures Act that we would stop the normal means of capitalism. We wouldn't allow businesses just to operate for the sake of profit, but instead for the good of all. And this actually saw the greatest period of economic recovery that our country has ever known. What I wouldn't do is line the pockets of my friends in big business like the Sask Party does. Cost overruns on every project, mega projects. Right now they're proposing an unnecessary Diefenbaker Dam expansion at the tune of $4 billion that will damage waterways throughout the South. This is unnecessary and would not actually stimulate the economy.
Thank you. Mr. Witherspoon.
Long before COVID-19, Saskatchewan families and local businesses were facing incredible hardship. Recession that the Sask Party created and made much worse with choices like the PST that was added to construction labor, put thousands out of work within Saskatchewan. The penchant of the Sask Party to outsource job after job, when we're talking about projects paid for with our hard-earned public dollars, are selling Saskatchewan people out. When we're building our schools, our roads, our hospitals, we need to be doing so with our workers and our companies to build Saskatchewan with Saskatchewan people and make sure we get this economy back on its feet. So what Saskatchewan New Democrats certainly will not do is increase taxes on everyday working families across Saskatchewan. That's something that the Sask Party did after the last election, and it devastated our economy and it devastated household finances for Saskatchewan people. Made this economic recovery a serious challenge, which is why we're not accepting the recession and the status quo, which is why we're investing and committed to getting this economy back on its feet.
Thank you. Mr. Zajac.
The Buffalo Party is going to work to develop good paying jobs. If you look at the jobs that are available to people in SAS jobs right now, they're not high paying jobs. So what we're going to do is we're going to meet with leaders of industry, leaders in our province who are drilling companies, who are working with the coal mines, working with power. We want to create good jobs and create investment in our province. We need to retro 4 and 5, get them running again, keep them operating as is. And you want to create good paying jobs, CCS, 4, 5, and Shand. There's no reason why we have the leading technology in the world. There's no reason why we shouldn't expand that technology and teach it to the world. At that point, the green energy people have no argument with the power sources that we have. And these are good paying jobs. When we start talking about revenue for the province, the income tax that the people pay right now, on average, the average person working at the mine is paying $10,402 in provincial income tax a year. So if the mine were to close, 300 people lose their jobs, that's $3.1 million in revenue that the province loses. And where are we going to replace that money from? Also, just recently, the mine and power donated $190,000 to United Way. If they're gone, where does that money come from?
Thank you. We'll go to the next question. Mr. Witherspoon, we'll start with you. The question is a balanced budget important? If so, why? And if not, why not?
A balanced budget is very important. Making sure our finances are sustainable and that we have the revenues to sustain our programs and our investments is incredibly important. This is sort of in the DNA of the Saskatchewan New Democrats, who under Tommy Douglas, Ellen Blakeney, Roy Romano, Lorne Calvert brought forward investments in people, but did so with balanced budgets and sustainable finances. This is a stark contrast to the Sask Party, who have been a fiscal train wreck, who couldn't balance the budget during the best days, who spent every last dollar from the rainy day fund and more, that tripled the debt for outsourced projects that were mismanaged to no end and went off the rails by way of cost, crooked deals like that of the GTH, mismanaged projects like the bypass. You need to manage your finances. We face a historic challenge. Sadly, because of the Sask Party, we weren't left with the fiscal cushion we deserve, but now is a time to be investing in Saskatchewan people, not cutting like the Sask Party, not selling off our Crown corporations.
Thank you. Ms. Hunter.
One thing that people always say about the Greens is that while we are a leftist party, we do actually believe in balancing the books. Of course we do. I do the books for my family farm, and it's very, very important that things line up. I, as well, am extremely concerned that the nest egg that we as a province had has been squandered. Just like a marriage, it really doesn't work in a situation like we have right now, where we have a majority government that has complete and total control. That would be like a marriage, where one partner gets to make all the decisions on how money is spent and then give no explanation how it happens. We look at the GTH land scandal, $1.6 billion unaccounted for. You know what? My father had a curb and gutter business for 20 years. There is no way, looking at the 17 overpasses, give or take, that bypass had, that it should have come to any more than, we started at $400 million, shouldn't have come to more than $800 million, right? So $1.6 billion unaccounted for.
Thank you. Mr. Zajac.
Of course, the Buffalo Party understands business, and we understand that a balanced budget is the ultimate goal and what a province should be held to as a standard to operate. Many of us that are in business and in banking, we understand that if there's no money there, you can't do things. So when you get false promises of we're going to build schools and we're going to build hospitals and we're going to do all these projects, and you start seeing road signs pop up all over the province where the future road projects are going to be, well, there's no money. So we're already running a deficit. To build and do all these things that they're talking about is financially poor planning and bad business for the province and the people of Saskatchewan. Our kids will be paying for that stuff forever. So if you read the Buffalo Party platform, you'll not see one spending commitment. We are a party that believes in, you know what, you want to trust the party. Everybody in Saskatchewan would say, you know what, it's been a tough year. We're just going to not do any projects this year. We're going to just try and recoup some money and do a little backtracking. And guess what? There's not one person in Saskatchewan that wouldn't understand. But election time provinces that just keep going and going, that don't make sense, it doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't make any sense for the people of Saskatchewan.
Thank you. Ms. Harper.
Thank you, and we absolutely believe that balanced budgets are very important for two reasons. The most obvious reason is that it allows your province to borrow at a much lower interest rate. Right now, Saskatchewan is borrowing at a lower interest rate than even Alberta. It was very noticeable when the pandemic first struck, where we had a province that had to reach out to the federal government for help because they couldn't borrow any money and they didn't know how they were going to make their payments on different things. The second reason is because when the investors are looking at somewhere to invest and set up a business, whatever it may be, they want to know that that government is stable and that they won't be facing large tax cuts going forward because the government is spending out of control. Because if you spend out of control, then the government's going to have to raise the taxes on all of the people in the province.
Thank you. Bruno?
Thank you. That's a lot of thought to think about when they said you have to have a balanced budget and you have to have a good economy. And the worst case scenario, as we've seen, or if you noticed, the Sask Party, last month they published the credit rating from Moody. And it was AAA, quote unquote, capital A, small a. This month, they made advertisement on how good they were into balancing and financing. They still have a AAA, but it's one capital A, one small a, one small a, which means basically the credit rating is going down the drain. The next one will be maybe A, small a's, and maybe in the future A, small b, or capital B. The issue is when we speak about balanced budget, we have to refer to families. How many families in Saskatchewan can balance their budget? They don't have the money to borrow, not because of automatically COVID-19, but because they don't have the means to do so. And that's the main aspect. The Sax Party enjoy 4 years, or maybe 10 or 12 since the last time, and looking for more. But basically, the families are no better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bruno, we're going to go back to you for this next question. The municipal operating grant is important to municipalities. What's your party's position on this grant?
You know, it is a huge aspect of the economy for any cities and RM in Saskatchewan. We developed within the Liberal Party of Saskatchewan a proposal to create a negative carbon zone in Regina Lakeview that will produce approximately between 2 and 4 gigawatts of power. As we know that the city of Regina uses approximately 4 to 5 gigawatts of power a year, we produce basically all of it, which means we can produce with 11 ridings around, 20 to 30 to 40 gigawatts of power. This could be sold, and the revenue sharing with the city and the province could bring a huge amount of benefit to the RM, to the cities, and they could be valuable.
Thank you. Mr. Zajac.
This municipal operating grant, which is also talked about as terms of grant in lieu of taxes, a long time ago, SaskPower, when they started to develop the SaskPower Grill, they made contracts with 109 communities in Saskatchewan. And basically what they said is, we're going to form a provincial power grid, and we're going to allow you to take a percentage of those earnings that we make. Just for example, for Estevan, the number that they should receive from this contract, which is a legitimate contract between the government and Estevan, is $923,917 this year. Because the Sask Party put a cap on it of 30% payment, they are going to lose $649,167 this year alone in revenue sharing from the unilaterally changed contract by the Sask Party to the city of Estevan. This affects 109 communities in Saskatchewan, with many of the small towns who rely on these little bits of money that they could have earned from their generation of their own power. Now they don't even get any money from this contract. So $649,167,000 for the next 10 years.
Thank you. Ms. Harper.
Thank you. The Saskatchewan Party is very proud that we were able to work in consultation with our municipal partners to have a formula that is predictable, based on the PST that's collected and then shared with municipalities. It is considered to be the best revenue sharing program in our nation, and through it, since 2007, we have provided $2.88 billion to our municipal partners. In addition, we've also provided in this particular budget an additional $150 million for unconditional funding for infrastructure projects to help them to stimulate the economy and to help them in their municipal infrastructure needs. So we think it is very important. We believe that our municipal partners are important to our families, to our communities, and we need to keep them strong. And we firmly believe that the formula that we have that's predictable for these municipalities is critical.
Thank you. Ms. Hutter.
I'm wondering if Ms. Harpower ever leaves the city. I have traveled to all 61 ridings in this province during this election cycle. I'm the only leader, as far as I know, that has done that. And with particular emphasis, I am a farmer. I do work in Regina in the winter, but I'm a farmer. And municipalities are expected to pay 100% of the cost of any infrastructure in their community. And yet they only receive this small amount coming over, right? When federal transfer payments come, province gets it, 10% goes over to municipalities, and then of course there is this grant. It's not nearly enough. The sorts of green initiatives that are extremely meaningful to the Green Party are best instituted at a municipal level. But you have to make sure that those municipalities, when they go to implement infrastructure, especially water treatment plants, which, by the way, this province needs a lot more of in small communities, are actually left saddled with huge debt. Unlike what I've just heard, what I've actually seen in small communities is that they are left struggling to pay this off and unable to pay for other needed services. How would you feel in the city if you had to pick between clean drinking water and the potential for your kid to learn how to skate? Right? No rink.
Thank you. Mr. Witherspoon.
Stable, predictable funding by way of the municipal operating grant is incredibly important to Saskatchewan people. I'm proud to say that Saskatchewan NDP as a government had initiated this process working with municipal partners, and that we were proud to recognize those efforts come to fruition under the current government. And that was supposed to set a very stable, predictable environment for municipalities who have all the needs and pressures right now: water, wastewater, road renewal, pressures of growing communities. But unfortunately, what the Sask Party did is they betrayed Saskatchewan communities and they hit taxpayers hard. Instead of ensuring that that ironclad agreement, they went and ripped up what's been identified as the grants in lieu after the last election without telling anyone that that was the plan, shorting municipalities across Saskatchewan of millions of dollars, hard-earned dollars that they needed. The consequence of that is that municipalities were left short, facing cuts, not able to do road renewal, and big-time property tax increases for many Saskatchewan residents. We need to make sure there's stable, predictable funding and dedicated infrastructure funding.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hunter, we'll go to you to start the next question. Using debt to finance capital projects. Is this an appropriate way to finance capital projects? If not, why not?
It really depends on the situation. Again, we see a situation in this province right now where we haven't seen such corruption and government misspending since the Devine era. I mean, a friend of mine from Saskatoon sent me a protest photo from back when I was in high school with me holding a big sign saying, "Stop cutting everything." And then I look, you know, within the last 3 years, and I'm holding the same sign, only I'm 47 years old now. Yes, we need to balance the budget. No, we shouldn't be borrowing money in order to deal with things that we need for this province, nice things that everybody expects. However, when someone has already blown the bank account, we're going to be in the same situation that we were once Devine finally got out, and it was necessary to bring Saskatchewan back to the level that we need it to be. It is possible, but it'll take hard work. It'll take people willing to roll up their sleeves, do what needs to be done to look after our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Witherspoon.
Those parts of that I think are right on the mark. We have a Sask Party government that blew and squandered a historic opportunity, that couldn't get the job done by way of balancing the budget during the best day, piled on debt for Saskatchewan people, and did so for projects that went off the rails and that were mismanaged and with crooked deals, and all too often putting taxpayers on the hook for more expensive private international interests through private consortia, convoluted schemes that are meriting and needing an inquiry, things like the GTH and the bypass. Saskatchewan New Democrats have seen this story before through Grant Devine. We see it again right now. What we need to do is build Saskatchewan in a common sense way. When we're investing to build our schools, our hospitals, our roads, we need to put Saskatchewan workers and companies to work, not outsourcing those projects time and time again to foreign companies and those outside of the province, and we need to make sure we're doing it in the most affordable way.
Thank you. Bruno.
Do you mind repeating the question? Because I think what you said was great, but I only
Using
heard the
debt
last.
to finance capital projects.
Yeah,
Is this an appropriate way to finance capital projects? If not, why not?
Yeah. I need the beginning because I didn't hear you from the beginning.
Oh, sorry. Using debt to finance capital projects.
You know, it's something which is known within the financial markets to do so, to finance debt or to finance capital project with debts. The issue is you can't repay them. And when we look at, historically speaking, because I've not been long in Saskatchewan, only since the 80s, 89, 90. And the first thing I noticed is when Devine was Prime Minister, he reduced the amount of money collected from the royalties, from the gas company, from the oil company, from all the companies dealing in Saskatchewan, basically which were and still are foreign companies. When Romano came in place, he said, oh, you know what? I didn't even know that we had such a bad economy. But did he raise the amount of royalties paid by the oil company? No, they didn't. And when Calvert was there, the same deal. Obviously, Bradwell came in because everybody was so upbeat about going forward, and it's still not done. So basically, we are a bankrupt province for the last 30 years.
Thank you. Mr. Zajac.
Well, there are times when projects are of such a significant size that, yes, you may have to use some type of debt source to complete these large infrastructure projects, but you just need to make sure that the infrastructure projects are going to expand the economy and give us good paying jobs like small upgraders and small refineries, which the Buffalo Party of Saskatchewan is all for. We upgrade our oil, we give our good jobs to Saskatchewan people, and I can promise you Buffalo Party will never hire SNC Lavalin. Also, another thing that is good is a partnership with the community. So if a community says, you know what, we need a seniors home, and because our seniors home is literally falling apart, and you tell them that if you raise $8 million, we will co-op with you and we'll build that building. The community comes up with $8 million, and I'm talking about Estevan, this is not made up. They come up with $8 million to build their seniors home, which is in disarray, and it's embarrassing. And then they tell you it's not time, and we're not ready to build that. So when I hear promises of we're going to build schools, we're going to build hospitals, it's just not true.
Thank you. Mrs. Harpower.
Thank you very much. And just to counter, it actually is true. We built 57 new schools. We built 5 hospitals and 14 long-term care homes. So we have been investing heavily into capital projects for the people of the province. We view it much like you would your house mortgage. You could maybe you could save enough money to build one house, but could you save enough money to build 2, 3, or 4? You would have to likely take out a mortgage. What you do have to be mindful of is what is the debt to GDP ratio within the province. And that will determine whether or not you're managing that in a very responsible manner. The debt to GDP ratio in Saskatchewan is the lowest in the country.
Thank you. We'll go to, you almost should have the Rocky music playing now. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. We're going to go to the candidate questions, and we're going to start with you, Ms. Hunter. You have 20 or 30 seconds to ask your question to any candidate you choose.
My question is to Trent Weatherspoon. My dad, as I said earlier, was in curb and gutter his entire life. I want to know why Vinci Construction out of France now owns part of our bypass, why we are paying a debt to them, $1.6 billion. I want to know why there hasn't been a proper audit. You want to know what normal people do at night? They read a novel. I read parliamentary budget reports. I read what comes out of the ledge. I want to know why a full audit hasn't happened. There is no list of what each load of gravel, each batch of rocks, each bit of concrete, everything that's in that bypass. $1.6 billion, and this is the biggest scandal this province has ever seen, and I want to know why Vinci Construction, the mob in France and Russia, aren't being talked about all the time.
It's a good question, and it's ultimately a question for the finance minister that's here today, and it's right on the mark. What we're dealing with is a government that's gone off the rails with their focus and has sent our dollars out of Saskatchewan and put a tremendous debt on the people of Saskatchewan. It makes no sense at all that the province of Saskatchewan would shut out Saskatchewan and Canadian companies from even tendering on that bypass project. It makes no sense at all that a project would grow in scope from originally $400 million to over $2 billion and counting. It makes no sense at all that this government thinks it can get away without having an audit for the people of the province, hiding the information for the people of the province. This is something we've taken to the former premier, the current premier, and this finance minister, and their answers and their actions are indefensible. We're talking about crooked deals here when we're talking about the GTH and the bypass. We're talking about taxpayers being on the hook for generations, and we're talking about your hard-earned tax dollars.
Thank you. So we gave, the question was asked in 45 seconds, so we'll give that to you, Bruno, and then the answer was a minute, so we'll give that to whoever.
My question is simple. I know a bit of finances and so on through education and also through hard work and being recognized by Standard & Poor's, the credit company. I was going to ask the person from the Saxe Party, and my apologies with names. And where in your financial disclosure do you show the money brought by the federal government into the economy of Saskatchewan?
Clearly, in our budget documents, the funds from the federal government are federal government transfer. It's a line item right in the budget document. So I didn't memorize the page numbers, I'm sorry, sir, but I can get that to you at some point in time. In the first quarter report that we released just before the election was called, I also was very, very clear in all of my media interviews that the improved position that we were in was largely due to the federal government reopen funding.
Thank you very much. Mr. Witherspoon, you have a minute this time. Or 45 seconds, sorry, 45 seconds. Minute to answer.
To answer or to ask?
To ask is 45 seconds.
Perfect. So I'll ask the minister, 4.5 years ago I stood on this very stage before Saskatchewan people were making an important decision in a provincial election, and the finance minister was not honest with Saskatchewan people. He said that he was going to balance the budget. He said that there wouldn't be tax hikes. He said that there wouldn't be cuts for classrooms. He promised that our crown corporations wouldn't be sold off. All of those things have turned out to be a lie. Saskatchewan people have been betrayed. The trust Saskatchewan people placed in your party has been betrayed. Attempted sell-offs of our Crown Corporation, shuttering STC, damaging cuts to our to our classrooms, and the biggest tax hike in our history. Why should Saskatchewan people have any trust in the Sask Party?
Thank you. As Mr. Witherspoon well understands, that the challenge that this province and Alberta and other oil-producing provinces faced was the enormous downturn in the oil industry, and there was also some challenges within our other resource industries. So we had to make a decision as a province to come up with a plan of how we were going to return to balance, to shift our reliance on resource revenues to consumption taxes. And we laid out a 3-year plan. We followed that plan, and quite frankly, that plan worked. Pre-pandemic, we were balanced, and we were in a strong $1.4 billion cash position. He is well aware of that plan.
You haven't balanced a budget.
Let her answer. Thank you.
Okay.
We followed that plan. He knows it. The Saskatchewan people know it, and they believe it.
Thank you. Mr. Witherspoon, your question. Oh, no, you already asked the question. Ms. Harpar, your question.
Thank you. So, Mr. Witherspoon, included is you've costed in your platform $2.7 billion worth of spending, and then there is additional $4 billion that's uncosted, and the majority of that is for operating. It's not one-time capital spending, so you're going to need that revenue each and every year. So in light of your leader's commitment and yourself tonight to balancing the budget at some point, and in light that your wealth tax will only generate enough revenue to pay for about 1% of your additional spending, I'm curious, can you share with us tonight what tax you feel would be the most effective way to fill the revenue gap to bring the province's books back to balance?
What I think is disappointing is the finance minister would bring in a question that's clearly been designed by political lackeys, as opposed to the finance officials that are there to preside over this province. And I think that's all too often the case. She knows that our platform has been fully costed. She knows those items have been laid out, and she knows that they're playing political games with those items. What we aren't doing is playing the kind of games that we saw from the Sask Party in the last election, pretending that they were going to balance the budget, never balancing that budget. In fact, I think you've only balanced 3 out of 13 years. That's a terrible record. And instead, hitting Saskatchewan people with the biggest tax increase in Saskatchewan's history, hitting families hard, hitting our economy and killing so many jobs within this province. and gutting our classrooms that are now at a breaking point. We face a historic challenge in Saskatchewan. We need to invest now in our classrooms, now in healthcare, and now to get this economy back on its feet, which is why we're committed to getting the PST off of construction and making the investments that people need.
Thank you, Mr. Zajac.
Asking a question?
You're asking the question.
Okay. My question is for the Finance Minister for the SAS Party. And I'm glad we're doing this debate because now everything is on the record. People of Estevan raised $8 million to build their nursing home. Unless you are a friend or in the good graces of the SAS Party, you don't get your seniors home plan. So my question to you is, with CCS being an issue, on July 9th of 2018, CEO and President of SAS Power, Mike Marsh, and then Dustin Duncan, the Energy Minister, said that they will be shutting 4 and 5 down. These are essential jobs to Saskatchewan. The revenue lost to the RM of Estevan and Coalfields will be in the millions of dollars from the lack of drilling or the lack of refining and getting coal. So why, in this time when you're self-admitting that COVID is tough, the province is tough, why are we going to get rid of these good jobs and not pursue CCS technology that we've spent tons of money on, which we know works?
Thank you.
So I want to say that we thank you, we believe the project works, that we have already have in Estevan, and it has taken a lot of emissions out of the air. But there are challenges with the pressures that we are under the federal government. I don't know the details of what SaskPower's plans are. I'm sorry about that, but I can't.
It's on the record, July 9th.
I know, but I wasn't there.
Thank you. We'll go back to the questions now. Mr. Witherspoon, you have the first response to the question. And the question is this: education property taxes based on property values which ebb and flow with market conditions. Other than new growth in assessments, would your party use the increased value in properties to increase the total return to the government or make the revaluation revenue neutral net of growth?
It's a very good question. It's one that people care about because they see the increases to their property taxes that have been brought upon by the cuts by the SAS Party, both to the reduction in the operating grant and as well the devastating ripping up of the grants in lieu. People see their bills and they know they don't see the road renewal and infrastructure renewal that they need. So we would certainly keep the assessment process as revenue neutral. We need to make sure we better support municipalities that are really struggling with that important renewal of infrastructure, water, wastewater, all the road and sidewalk infrastructure. And the SAS Party's been a bad partner on this front, and the bill has been stuck on Saskatchewan property taxpayers. Ask any homeowner, any business here in Regina or across the province.
Thank you. Ms. Harper.
Thank you. The Saskatchewan Party significantly reduced the education portion of property tax within this province. I was there when there was tax revolts because the NDP kept on downloading onto the municipalities. They reduced they kept increasing education property tax to the point where there was tax revolts in this province, the first and only time in the history of the province, and that was under the NDP. The Saskatchewan Party, when we formed power, we reversed it to where it should be, where it is fair and more equitable for those property owners. We have frozen the majority of our years. There will be, from time to time, will be increases, and I can't say what the next budget will be. We're not projecting any increase at this point in time in any of those taxes, because right now we have to focus on recovery, and that means recovery for everybody within our province. So we have frozen the property tax for the time being. We have done that a number of years, and we have definitely lowered them far, far lower than they ever were under an NDP government.
Thank you. Mr. Zajac.
Well, I think that property taxes serve a purpose, right? We do have to have that money for schools and for that. Should it be a revenue-producing part of the government's budget? It shouldn't be. When people's incomes are reduced, people working in my community have had to take 30 or 40% pay cuts. Whether you whether you lower the property taxes or keep them the same, they're harder to pay. So I think the government has to be responsible enough to understand that, you know, for us to keep our jobs, we've had to take pay cuts, and that doesn't make just the property taxes harder to pay. It makes the groceries harder to pay. It makes all the other things harder to pay. And so, yeah, a a reduction in property taxes would be a well thought out thing. And if you look at the commercial taxes that some of these businesses are paying, they're astronomical. So you tack that onto a carbon tax and extremely high property taxes for businesses. If you go around and travel around my community and ask some of the business owners what they're paying for property taxes on their shops and businesses that employ hundreds and hundreds of people in my community, it's astronomical and unfair.
Thank you. Ms. Hunter.
Sask Party right now is behaving like a really nasty version of Robin Hood. Stealing from the poor, giving to the rich, simply not acceptable. Right now, the amount that we pay in property tax is absolutely ridiculous. We don't actually live on the waterfront in Vancouver, okay? We live in Regina. We live in Saskatoon. I happen to love our province very much. But the amount that we're paying in property tax, you'd think that we lived somewhere where wealthy investors were coming to show up and possibly buy our homes. Okay, my sister lives in Vancouver. We live in Saskatchewan, and our property taxes should reflect that. Instead, it's never the solution to go and tax big business properly, which is what needs to happen here. Tax the wealthy, stop being so hard on ordinary working folk. And I did hear her complaining that the populace wasn't rising up and revolting. No problem, I've got you there, I'm your girl. I'm very good at leading revolts. So yes, we are totally prepared. The working people will rise up. I am absolutely thrilled to say I will organize a protest in that tomorrow.
Thank you. Bruno.
Wow, good for you, because they agree. It's just sometimes people will carry their guns and so on, which is not too good. But the fact is, as we see these particular property taxes increasing, we see the big corporation, and I will go to Ms. Hunter's side on this one, the property, the taxes on royalties are going down and down and down. So basically what is happening, and that's happening all over the world, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And who do we blame for this? We don't blame the rich, we just blame the people who can't make ends meet. And that's a sad aspect. So if we were to really, really consider this particular option of raising taxes, let's raise taxes on the people who can afford it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next question. Mr. Zajac, you'll have the opportunity to answer first. And the question is, not the answer, should Saskatchewan...
Yes, can I have the answer?
Should Saskatchewan review its royalty levies?
Well, unfortunately, the royalty levies are minimal right now. With the lack of support that the oil and gas community has gotten in Saskatchewan, and this, you have to remember, this is an industry that literally gave the Sask Party the bankroll of money that they had. Right now, companies that have been in business for 20 years, 30 years are struggling. They're hanging on by a tooth and a nail. Businesses are shutting down every day. We can't have another shutdown in Saskatchewan, period. Because if we do, the end of businesses that compared to what we've already lost, they will never come back. And when we start losing those jobs, we lose the tax base. So no, I think the royalties should be reduced, and I think that we should promote drilling and being self-sufficient in oil in Saskatchewan. Building upgraders, giving us the ability to sell our oil locally to ourselves, and forgetting about buying oil from these. We have plenty here. They're good paying jobs. They'll stimulate this economy and grow. Thank you.
Ms. Hunter.
Again, you're shutting the barn door, the horse is already out. The time for this was during the time when they were showing endless growth, using up all of our oil reserves. They did not tax those industries properly, and now we're just being left with a giant mess to clean up. Okay, go look at Norway. There they properly taxed at a rate of, I think, 28%, and they have a giant amount of money in the bank now that they have encouraged all of that resource extraction. Saskatchewan needs to move to a clean energy economy. Many oil and gas companies around the world are realizing that as their investors pull out, which is actually happening in Canada as well, that it's time for them to transition over to clean energy technology. Invest in solar, wind, and geothermal. Geothermal pairs quite well with the abandoned oil and gas wells. We need to be doing this for the sake of our children and our grandchildren. It's time to move forward. Saskatchewan doesn't have to be a holdout for always being the most backwards place on earth. We can be progressive and move on this now.
Thank you. Bruno.
Thank you. I think I mentioned that before, but I'm gonna do it again. This particular aspect of royalty, basically all the major companies are foreign companies owned by foreign entities in Saskatchewan. Could we call about the oil, the gas, potash, uranium. But there's one aspect of Saskatchewan which is purely Saskatchewan, is the grain held by the farmers. And the farmers basically don't get any royalties from the elevator. And I won't go back to what happened some years ago about the selling off of the elevators to foreign ownership. But there's an issue there. It's the price of grain that the farmers sell to the elevator and the price the elevator gets of the grain when they put it to port. Now it so happened that I would propose that the farmers get a royalty free of tax, a percentage of this particular money that the foreign companies or foreign elevators earn. And that would be also an aspect that we have to consider. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Mr. Witherspoon.
The Saskatchewan NDP are not pushing for a royalty review or a royalty hike. We recognize the importance of our resource industries in our province, as well as the hardship that they're incurring and facing, and we need to be thinking of those industries and those workers, which is why we have a plan to get our economy back up on its feet. That is in contrast to the Sask Party, which hit the potash sector hard a couple years ago without any consultation at all when they jacked up potash royalties. Since then, sadly, we've seen hundreds of hardworking potash miners lose their jobs. We've seen a potash mine close. We need to make sure we're supporting Saskatchewan workers across this province. We're committed to getting this economy back on its feet. We're committed to getting the PST off of construction labor. That was, of course, added by the Sask Party without any consultation right across all sectors, and it decimated our construction industry. Permits plummeted, and thousands of hardworking people were put out of work, many that had to move out of Saskatchewan. And we have to stop outsourcing our public projects, schools, hospitals, roads, to foreign companies and those outside of Saskatchewan. We have the workers and we have the companies.
Thank you, Ms. Harper.
Thank you. We believe that the oil industry right now, more than ever before, needs to have stability and predictability. It is not the time to do a royalty review. And although maybe Mr. Witherspoon did not know it, but his leader, and I have it on record, has said that they would consider a royalty review. So now is not the time. Now is the time to, quite frankly, put forward different incentive programs, targeted incentive programs, a number of which the Saskatchewan Party has introduced to help this industry to be able to stabilize, to be able to increase production, to be able to keep good paying jobs within our province, which are critical. We need to support this industry. We need to stand up to the federal government that is putting forward policies that is damaging our industry right here in Saskatchewan.
Thank you. Ms. Harper, you'll be first for this next question here. How important is it for Saskatchewan to have competitive tax rates both on the personal level as well as the business or corporate level?
We believe it's very critical to be competitive, and I think it's going to be more critical as we go forward. Every single province and every single country is going to be competing now for those investors in order to manage their recovery and their growth going forward. So I think it's going to be more and more competitive. We are competitive in almost all of our taxes. We are the second lowest for personal income tax. That is why in our platform we're going to eliminate the small business tax for a time period in order to keep and build up our small businesses. We will look at a number of incentive programs. We have some in our budget, such as the new home construction PST tax credit. We have the home renovation tax credit here in our platform. We will always look at those taxes. We will compare them to other jurisdictions. We will ensure that we can be as competitive as possible, not just with other provinces, but with other countries.
Thank you.
Mr. Witherspoon. Well, competitiveness on a taxation perspective is very important. It's something Saskatchewan New Democrats have always been focused on and have certainly tended to and made improvements to make sure that this economy was moving forward and making sure that we had the fiscal capacity and the balanced budgets to plan for our future. That's in stark contrast to what we've seen from the Sask party. And, you know, that minister, for her to not mention the huge competitive disadvantage that she placed Saskatchewan companies at and the damage that she caused and that this premier caused and the Sask party caused when they imposed the PST on construction labor is really disappointing. Because this is real lives for Saskatchewan people. When the PST was brought forward, of course, it was a doubling of the take, a $1 billion increase, and an imposition onto construction labor. It's the epitome of a job-killing tax. Permits plummeted across Saskatchewan. Thousands of hard-working tradespeople, the world's finest, were left without jobs. And I saw many of them. I represent many of them that were left with that terrible decision, and sadly many of them that couldn't find employment and had to leave the province. That's why we're committed to getting the PST off construction labor to fire up this economy.
Thank you. Ms. Hunter.
It's always said, okay, are we going to tax people? How are we going to tax people? This becomes a major issue. Almost every tax that we have in this country was brought in as a supposedly temporary measure, and then they end up staying forever. I certainly agree with Mr. Witherspoon on that. I mean, how is it that we bring something in and then we just sort of sneakily forget to put an end date on it? That being said, I also sort of say, well, why do we always talk about taxes? Again, being a rural person, I'd like to bring up the fact that I remember in living history a time when we as a society offered a lot of rebates to help bring about nice things for our province. And so again, that carrot and the stick analogy, right? I mean, we have the option to beat people into submission with taxes, really hurting the economy, and still ensuring that we can pay for things, or we have the option of offering incentives. And we need to be offering those incentives to small individuals, not giant businesses and our buddies who've perhaps left the government.
Time's up. Bruno.
Thank you. You know, it is interesting. And I'm listening to everybody, and I still have to wait for the person from the Buffalo Party. But what we do have, or what it seems to me, we have some type of trickle economy from Reagan and some Trumpism since the last 3 years and 11 months. This is a big issue because the rich become richer and the poor become poorer. How many people are going to say, you know what, yes, I would love to have a lower tax, but how about my wages? How about the young women, the young couple, the young families with children? And I'm not talking about COVID-19, because COVID-19 is all over the world. Everybody has to deal with it. But still, they can't make ends meet. And we have to realize that somebody is making money and somebody is paying the price for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zajac.
The Buffalo Party has a platform that we want a deal just like Quebec has. We want to take over our federal tax and our provincial tax, and we'll put a flat tax on for every single person in Saskatchewan. It'll less complicate the system, it'll put money back in everybody's pockets, and everybody will have extra spending money. Another part of our platform that we talk about is when you're a senior, if you're 70 years old, at that point you'll no longer pay income tax. That will help every senior automatically in Saskatchewan, day one, put money back in their pockets. These are the people who have built Saskatchewan, who've lived here, built these homes, built these communities, and what they pay in tax on the minimal amounts that they get for pensions is embarrassing as a province. So other things too, should they go to work? You take a job at Walmart, you're a part-time, supposedly my dad goes to work part-time at Walmart. He'll have a card and he'll say, I'm 78 years old and I don't pay any tax. That keeps that extra money in their pockets and they're able to go out and get the things that they need. The other thing is, Sask Party, if you were so concerned about businesses and the taxes and eliminating the taxes now, why didn't you do it a year ago when the recession started and all these businesses started struggling and they could have been alive today and still in business?
Thank you. Ms. Hunter, we'll go to you for the next question, and I think you already talked a little bit about this. What are your views on a rainy day fund for resource revenues versus paying down the provincial debt?
Well, I guess I was just being farsighted and looking ahead there. I think that any sensible person would say that when we look at the revenues for our families, that is exactly what we would do. I know that I have 2 children who are now going to university. If I hadn't planned ahead for that and made sure I had a rainy day fund so that my wonderful children could get the education that they need, that's a problem. And what has happened in this province is that instead of holding on to a nest egg, instead of making sure that the oil and gas industry was properly paying their fair share and not instead punitively, like I say, doing this really nasty reverse Robin Hood routine where instead hardworking lower income people end up bearing the brunt of taxes and cuts and large industry gets away scot-free. I would say yes, we should have made sure that Saskatchewan actually saved some money for our rainy day fund. Well, the rainy day is now here. COVID-19 has hit. We're in a recession. We're bankrupt pretty much because of the Sass party, and now we're in trouble. So absolutely use some good household management skills in the government.
Thank you. Bruno.
Oh, what happened to the money the people should have and don't have? And I'm going to talk about, because gentleman next to me from the Buffalo Party mentioned somebody who is sick or 70 years old, and I'm getting there in a couple of years. The issue for me is basically being retired, basically like a lot of people, depending on the money of my partner to survive. I can't survive without my partner, and that's a big issue. I pay taxes, I work in Saskatchewan, I bought things in Saskatchewan, but what does the Saskatchewan party does, or what is the party in power doing for me basically as a retired person? I make $8.25 with my pension. That's not much. What can you buy at $8.25 based on 8-hour day, 5 days a week on a monthly basis? Not much. But if the government was to prop up what I make, I mean the provincial government was prop up what I make with the minimum wage, then it would give me approximately $500 more a month, and then I get to the $2,000 that we need. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Harper.
There are 3 kinds of debt for the government of Saskatchewan. One is the debt that Crown corporations take on in order to have their infrastructure and to have new hookups within our province. They have a business plan to pay that debt and make their payments. The second debt is like I said before, it's like the mortgage of the house. So it's what you borrow for infrastructure. We invest 2% into sinking funds to make those future payments. The third debt is the most problematic debt, and that's the operating debt, or can be compared to a credit card debt. So do I believe that when we are at a certain level that we should have a rainy day fund? Yes, but I don't think it should be until we address the operating debt.
Thank you. Mr. Zajac.
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. What are your views on a rainy day fund for resource revenues versus paying down the provincial debt?
Well, I think that being fiscally responsible means that you have to do it in a balance. When you're in business, you know that you have to have some cash reserves for things that are unexpected, COVID-19s or downturns in industry. If you don't have a rainy day fund of cash, you're not able to get through those hard times. Anybody who's a good business planner understands that. Also, you do have to reduce debt at a level that's not detrimental to the economy and to the people of the province. So at the same time, once you have some cash reserves built up, you start to target your highest interest debts, pay those debts off, and get yourself back to a balanced budget again, which anybody knows in banking and finance, when you make $100 million and on the bottom line you lose $10 million, well, you don't cash flow. And when you don't cash flow, you can't borrow money. And you can't borrow money responsibly. So you only have 2 choices at that point. You either produce money, which costs every single taxpayer more money, or you reduce the amount that you borrow and try and pay off the debt.
Thank you. Mr. Witherspoon.
This is such an important question, and it's great to hear it about how do we deal with windfall revenues when we're dealing with them. And it just really highlights to me the squandered opportunity by the Sask Party. And of course, we're all paying for that. We went through a period of time where we had a commodity super cycle, where agriculture, where energy, where agriculture were booming. We had more resource revenues coming in than ever before. But this government failed to capture that opportunity and to invest for Saskatchewan people. They neither paid down debt, and they certainly didn't put any dollars away. In fact, they've more than tripled the debt over that period of time, from $7 billion to now $24 billion, often for these outsourced, mismanaged, crooked projects that we've talked about here tonight. This is not sustainable. I've been a voice over 13 years, as have the Saskatchewan NDP, for the responsible use of windfall, for that deployment of debt pay down, as well as balancing that with putting some dollars away for the long term. A rainy day fund, a heritage fund, neither of those things happened. This government piled on debt and drained every dollar in the rainy day fund.
Okay, we're just about out of time, so I'm going to give you 30 seconds for this last question, then we're going to go to closing comments. We're going to start with you, Bruno. Point blank. Will your party sell the Crown, SaskTel, Sask Energy, SaskPower, SGI?
No.
Thank you, Bruno. Mr. Zajac.
That's easy too. That's a no for us. We should be using our Crown corporations to our benefit. Like, these are companies that have some great technology such as carbon capture, and we've proven that it's zero emissions at Boundary. Why don't we duplicate that, and then why don't we teach that to the world? Everybody here knows China's building 20 mega mines a year because they can't buy coal from North Korea anymore. So listen, why don't we do this? Carbon capture is getting cheaper and cheaper. We already know that the cost to build the next one is going to be 35% less because we're not going to use SNC Lavalin to build it. Also, the people in Saskatchewan, good jobs, they can build it. I'm out of time.
Thank you. Mr. Witherspoon.
100% no. Our Crowns are built by and owned by Saskatchewan people, and they're here for future generations. The Sask Party cannot be trusted on this front, and this is critical to this election. After the last election, when they pretended that our Crowns were safe, they went directly at them. Of course, they shut down STC, but they brought forward legislation to sell off up to half of our Crowns, and they entered into contractual negotiations and many meetings to sell off SGI and SaskTel. They cannot be trusted. When our Crowns are gone, they're gone. They need to be used to make life more affordable and extend services like high-speed connectivity and the kinds of reductions that we're proposing through SGI for drivers.
Thank you. Out of time. Ms. Harper.
The answer is absolutely no.
Thank you. Ms. Hunter.
The answer is no, and it's unconscionable the amount of our Crowns that have already been sold off and threatened. The STC being shut down with nothing but hatred towards poor people. And the federal government was willing to offer a lifeline. We had small short-line buses already bought and paid for. Not taking that money, the Greens definitely would have taken it. What's wrong with you when somebody offers cash to help save a needed service? I don't know, maybe the Sask Party never has to take the bus. My family did. We use the bus for everything.
Thank you very much. We'll go to closing remarks. Bruno, you start off.
2 minutes. So I would like to thank you, John. I would like to thank Builders Association. I would like to thank Access for the opportunity. But I do have a few words as well because I prepared something. And as I said, there's a small song at the end. The NDP has dreams. The Saskatchewan Party has dreams. The Green Party has dreams. The Buffalo Party has dreams. Even the Forum absentee, the Conservative Party has dreams. But you, the women, the men, the boys, the girls, the generation X, Y, Z have dreams. The less fortunate, the working middle class, the unions, the small, medium, large company business leaders have dreams of a better Saskatchewan, a better world. And the Liberal Party of Saskatchewan would like to carry your dreams and make them a reality in the next Parliament of Saskatchewan when you vote on October 26. And as Louis Armstrong once almost sang, I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them blossom for me and you. And I think to myself, your dreams are a wonderful world. Oh, yeah.
I love that, Bruno. That was great. Thanks very much. We'll go to you, Mr. Zajac, now.
The Buffalo Party will stand for every single person in Saskatchewan. We stand with the coal mines. We stand with power. We stand with the oil. We love resources. The only way for us to work our way out of this debt is to take full use of those resources and bring them to the world. We're not professional politicians. None of us are. If you look at the backgrounds of our candidates, we're ranchers, we're cattlemen, we're ex-RCMP. We're people who just are tired of the federal government dictating to us what we need to do. And one of those things is carbon emissions. There is no reason for small town Saskatchewan, and we've committed to Coronach as well. When we get into power and we get into the legislature, Coronach will stay open too. If anybody's ever been there, it's a sad, sad story. Those people have had that coal mine around forever. Generations of family have moved in and out of that town, all working for the coal mine, everybody in farming. You can't tell me that those people aren't heartbroken, and it's coming to Estevan and it's coming to small town Saskatchewan. If you don't stop it now and take a hard stance, the federal government wants to deplete the wealth that people in Saskatchewan have created over the last 50 years. We don't vote for the Liberals, we don't support the Liberals, and they're going to do everything in their power to decimate our small town economies. And if the SAS Party isn't willing to do it, we will do it for you, and we will be a strong voice in the legislature every day, and we're going to hold the SAS Party accountable. And I can promise you that Saskatchewan contractors, Saskatchewan people will always be used first on every infrastructure project that we have in Saskatchewan. And I know for a fact that we will never hire SNC Lavalin. When you look at the overspend on the CCS project itself, it operated at 40% capacity when finished. SNC Lavalin wouldn't come back. It forced the project late. SAS Power got sued by a company that we had promised carbon capture emission product to, and we had to pay $12 million fine. That all goes into our power bills. Also, it's important to understand that the people of the Sask Buffalo Party want a good deal for everybody in Saskatchewan. We'll be independent in Saskatchewan or out of Saskatchewan. We want the same deal as Quebec. We're going to do our own immigration, we're going to do our own tax, and we will end payments to the east.
Thank you. Mr. Witherspoon.
Well, thank you, John, and to the business organizations that facilitated these discussions. I think I've taken 4.5 hours of debate in the various topics this week, and it's been wonderful. And a very important conversation at a historic time and a historic challenge that our province faces. And we're doing so here on Treaty 4 territory in the homeland of the Métis. The fact is, Saskatchewan people, families, workers, local businesses are facing significant hardship in this province right now. We need to do, of course, all we can to protect lives and livelihoods, but we need to stop the cuts that we have from the SAS Party. This election represents a crossroads. It's about stopping the cuts in our classrooms that have been devastated. It's about investing in our seniors and making life more affordable. It's about closing the gaps and the delays in mental health and addiction services that leave those in their most desperate and darkest and moments of greatest despair without the supports they need and deserve, and that's tragic and costly. And we need to get this economy back on its feet. Quite simply, the status quo that's being put forward by the SAS Party doesn't cut it. It will leave us in recession and leave people without the jobs that they need and deserve, and it will leave our finances in deficit for a long period of time. We need to bring this economy to life. We need to make sure that workers get back to work and that they have fair wages. Not the lowest minimum wage, the worst minimum wage in Canada, but a fair minimum wage. We need to make sure that when we're building our schools, our hospitals, our roads, that we're doing so with Saskatchewan companies and workers, maximizing that investment, not sending those dollars out of province as we've seen the SAS Party do with billions of dollars in deals that can't be defended in any way, shape, or form. And we need to get the PST off of construction labor to generate the kind of investment to get private sector projects moving forward and to get people back to work. Friends, this is an important time. We're up for the task as Saskatchewan New Democrats. We're ready to put people first. Let's work together. A better tomorrow awaits.
Thank you. Time's up. Ms. Harper.
There is no question that the Saskatchewan Party has made investing into this great province a major priority. There is always more work to do, but I am proud of our record, and I will stand by my party and the Premier against the NDP record of decline and closure every day. The resilience of our province came through in the wake of a global pandemic, and I would like to thank all of the people of Saskatchewan for their work, for their sacrifice, and their diligence in working together. Our plan for a strong Saskatchewan will make life more affordable. It will balance the budget by 2024, and we have a plan for growing Saskatchewan. This will mean a strong economy, strong communities, strong families, and a strong Saskatchewan. We can't have sustainable social progress without economic progress, and I believe there is a clear choice for voters. Who do you trust to lead Saskatchewan's economic recovery? Thank you for everyone for listening.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hunter.
Thank you very much to Access Communications and the Chamber of Commerce for putting this on. And thank you to my honored colleagues for showing up this evening. I think these conversations are very important. It's really important that the Saskatchewan people hear from all of the political parties that are in this province, that they hear what other voices are available. We didn't see that in the televised leaders debate. Scott Moe and Ryan Miley had the opportunity to invite the only other third-party leader, myself, who had a full slate of candidates. I was capable of forming government, and I was not given that opportunity. While it was then said that the rules were that only those who already had a seat in the House got to go to the leaders' debate, that's actually not true. The Liberal leader got to go to those debates for 2 full elections after they no longer had a single seat in the House. True fairness is what the constituents of Regina Elphinstone Centre have the opportunity to vote for this election. Seeing on our provincial stage what we see on the federal stage, more than just 2 voices, the same 2 voices that we've heard from for forever. In Saskatchewan, we have the NDP and the Sask Party. Let's make sure there's another strong voice in the ledge so you can see more of what you saw tonight. Effective opposition, hearing numerous voices. I'm prepared to be that voice every single day, to make sure that your concerns are heard on a daily basis. I have the full support of the Saskatchewan Green Party behind me, and I'm ready to be your voice. On October 26th, vote for a kind and caring transition. Vote for the Saskatchewan Greens.
Thank you so much. I want to first of all thank all of you for being part of the democratic process. It's so important what each and every one of you do. And thank you all of you for being here. We thought it was important that we invited you all, so we're thankful that you're all here. And thank you so much for watching. We think this is really, really important. So on behalf of all of our partners, including Access Communications that does so much in all of our communities, I want to thank them for helping out tonight. Now listen, let me tell you what's the most important thing. Even more important than everything that was said here tonight. The single most important thing is please get out and vote. It's so important that you do that. So please get out and vote. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Live debate coverage is brought to you by the Regina and District Chamber of Commerce, the Saskatchewan Realtors Association, the Regina and Region Home Builders Association, Regina Downtown, and the Regina Warehouse District.
Winter doesn't feel quite so long with Access Rural Internet. With unlimited data comes unlimited streaming and browsing, so you can warm up with your fill of Netflix originals or catch up with friends and family on social media. Plus, with Access's low prices and zero installation fees, you can put your money towards what really matters, like upgrading to that new sled. Browse more for less with Access Rural Internet. Visit myaccess.ca for more information.